decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. With Dave Minuk, with Ezra Ginsburg, I am your host, Drew Mindell. Pleased to see so many of you joining us on this Saturday morning to talk about the Winnipeg Jets, talk about goings-on all throughout the NHL. We're with you for the next couple hours, going to have some fun recapping the week that was for the Jets, looking forward to the week that is upcoming for the Jets, talking about Cole Perfetti, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Andrew Kopp, and much, much more. If you haven't yet done so, good morning to you. Smash the like button now that you're here. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you get alerted each and every time we go live. Gentlemen, long time no see. It has been a whopping about 8 hours since we last got together. How did you spend your time between last night's post-game show and this morning's, the start of this morning's show? Did you do some other quality work in between there, Mr. Ginsburg?
Yeah, I did some knitting, did a little bit of ironing. I want to know, of the three of us, who got the most amount of sleep, because I think I got maybe 5.5 hours. Ruben decided to wake up at, I think, 1:30 and 4:30, and then both kids got up at around 6:15. So I don't know how much sleep you guys got, but I'm already on cup number 7 of strong coffee. So really the only I'm actually being propped up, but you don't see someone's actually propping me up behind me. I'm a little bit tired, but no, I mean, we love it. It's a little bit rough with those late games on Friday nights and then the Saturday morning show. But, we're never going to miss a Saturday morning. It doesn't matter even if we only get like 10 minutes of sleep.
It's true. We're not going to miss a Saturday morning. We're not missing this Saturday morning. I got more sleep than that. Fortunately, my kids are a little bit older than yours, and I think a little bit better sleepers than yours. So, you have my sympathies. I
thought, Drew, you were going to say my kids are a little bit older and a little bit better than yours. Okay. World's number one dad over here.
That would be a bridge too far for me to go. But in any event, yes, good that you're upright, or that somebody's keeping you upright after a late night and then quite an early morning for you. And Mr. Minuk, I know you were up late doing a lot of great work on the website. The name of that website, of course, being illegalcurve.com.
Yeah, no, it was, I had a post game with Ez for a bit. He stuck around, and then eventually I kicked him out of the house.
I gotta tell you, I would throw, I think that's your guy's fundamental flaw. Well, there's two flaws.
We got a few, actually. The fact that you use singular was appreciated, but
I actually think I have like dozens of flaws, maybe even hundreds.
One, that you still let Ezzy do the show from your house. That's flaw number one.
Yeah.
Flaw number two is that the show ends last night at about 12:30 in the morning, and you know that you have a show at 9 o'clock this morning, and you don't immediately have like an eject button to get him out of your house, as opposed to you guys having the post game show that you tend to have after each and every post game.
Yeah. Show. That's fair. I mean, I think I made it clear. I was like, I think it's time to go. But then he stuck around a little bit longer. So it's all good. And then, I had some work to do, get the podcast up in case people missed hearing our voices. They'd be able to download it on, whatever they get their podcast. Just a request from me, by the way, if folks can, because this also helps. If you can throw those comments up on if you can do reviews of our podcast, that also is very helpful. We love the liking. We love everything.
Reviews.
Well, no, I don't really care.
Or if there's somebody out there that can draw our portraits, we would appreciate that as well.
Well, that's completely not connected to my thought, but it's always a good thought from you, so that's good. But if people can go on, if you listen on iTunes, if you can go on and leave a review, preferably a good review. But if you have something that you think we could work on, you can always email me instead of leaving that as a review, but you can do that as well. So anywho, if you guys can do that, that'd be awesome, because those kind of things help us as well. So that's what I was working on. I was working on the podcast, and then making sure illegalcurve.com had the morning papers that was ready to go first thing this morning. So got all that done. Finally fell asleep, and then the problem is then you're awake. Yeah. So I don't think I fell asleep until about 2:30 maybe.
Well, you know what you should have done? You could have just gone to Ezzy's house And if you were still awake, you could have just dealt with his kids when they woke up. That would have been the kinder thing for you to do.
I don't know that it would have been very understanding.
Drew,
like,
you remember those days?
I would have been like,
there's nothing worse than as I'm trying to go to bed and then I hear Ruben crying and then I can hear Naomi upstairs.
Whoa, hang on. Time out. Stop.
I slept
stop
downstairs again
Stop
yesterday.
the show. Are you back to sleeping in the basement?
I slept on the futon.
Because of a
he was getting in at 1.
Or because late night arrival issues.
Naomi asked me to. So when Naomi asked me to, she just because I was getting home so late, and sometimes the kids sleep in our bed, right? So yeah, I slept in the basement again.
You know what? You're about you're not far off from sleeping.
I'm basically a dog.
Yeah, I was gonna say you know
he's a big dumb animal, folks.
Sometimes I get to sleep in the big bed. Other times I get to sleep outside.
All right, let's do the show.
Okay, that's good. Let's get going. The Winnipeg Jets.
I feel like my dad's going to text me and tell me that we should get going with the hockey talk and enough of this nonsense.
Well, the Winnipeg Jets lost last night to the Vancouver Canucks by a 3-2 margin. They finished the week of 4 games with a record of 2-1-1. Obviously, you're a little disappointed in that you cannot get the victory or at least a point in Vancouver on the second half of the back-to-back. It's a rare regulation time defeat for these Winnipeg Jets. We know that those have been certainly few and far between. They have points in 14 of their last 16 games. They dropped to 9-4-4 on the season. You know, obviously we'll talk about last night's game. I want to talk about the whole week that was for the Jets, but really what's been standing out to me as I sort of took a step back and, you know, when you're so focused on the post-game shows and you're focused on the immediacy of every game, you sometimes...
I'm still trying to figure out your math, how it works.
Say that again? My math works.
14 out of 16?
14 out of 16, 9-4-4 in their last, points, 9-4-4 on the season and points in 14 of the last 16 games. No? You disagree?
What's 9 plus 4?
13.
Mm-hmm.
9-4-4 on the season. Points in 14 of their last 16 games.
Fine, go ahead.
Okay, guys, he's talking about? A bus leaves the train station going 45 kilometers an hour. Okay, there's another train going the other way. I don't know what's going on right now. Okay. Continue.
Thank you. I was in the middle of my thought. Dave interrupted me with his funny math, and my math was perfectly fine. In any event, what was it not fine? I don't understand what your smirk on your face is.
Dave just got a smirk. He's just having a good time.
Okay.
Dave's running on 4 hours of sleep. Okay, leave him alone.
What I was going to say is that what I think, what's jumping out to me the most about the Jets, besides their record and besides their impressive streak of getting points more often than not, is where they are possession-wise. Because that's what apparently everyone's saying. It's 13 out of 15 games.
Well, I mean, last I checked, 9 plus 4 is 13, but I mean...
Yeah, but oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah. Okay, fine. Yes, I understand where I made my mistake. Thank you, everybody. Dave, thank you.
Like, do you guys need to go back to like grade 9 geography class?
I mean,
or geometry class.
Drew, I figured I was thinking to myself, I'm like, unless Drew is some sort of math genius and I'm missing something here on, I'm like 9 plus 4 is 13, and I'm thinking to myself, you figured out one extra point game that they got a point in, and I'm thinking to myself, Drew must be a wizard, and I'm not figuring it out. But you know what? Look, we correct each other on this show.
That's true. We do. We call each other out, and we drive that bus right over them.
We're always quick to pick, to call the other guy out. So, I mean, the funny part is you were so adamant. I was like, I'm thinking to myself, like, holy, is my math that bad that I can't add 9 plus 4, get 13, and figure out that's 13 and 15, not 14 and 16, but hey.
You're right. I'm wrong. Apologies. Mea culpa.
The Jets are tied for first in the Central with the
I want to give you kudos. You're very aggressive, though.
You're very aggressive. King Dave.
I was like, okay.
If I've learned anything over the last number of years, Dave, is that if you're going to be wrong, the way to be wrong is aggressively wrong.
Well, you win then.
Yeah.
You win.
I'm just engaging in truthiness. I think I'm eligible to be president or something the more I do that. In any event, what I was saying is that what's as impressive to me about the Jets' record and the Jets' performance is the possession numbers. Because that's not something we've seen from this team as of late. Yeah. The last number of years, possession has been always the bugaboo of the Jets. Possession is what a lot of those who subscribe to analytics, primarily will say is always going to end up coming back to catch, to bite the Jets in the behind. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of truth to what they're saying. So I'm not anti-analytics or anything of that nature. But you look today as the Jets stand here, and 5-on-5, the Jets are 7th in the NHL in possession. In Corsi 4, 52.8%. To me, that is besides the record, that is an additional good barometer for how this team is actually performing and how this team is likely going to perform, I think, going forward, all other things being equal, assuming there's no catastrophic run of injuries or anything like that. The goaltending is good, and when Hellebuyck lately has been great, and when the possession numbers are where they're at, the Jets are going to win more often than not, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it ultimately boils down to, guys, that the Jets aren't as reliant on Connor Hellebuyck stealing games, right? And I think, you can start with Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon on the back end. I mean, you saw it even yesterday, right? Like, even though it was a second game of back-to-back, the way Morrissey and Schmidt were moving the puck and getting shots on net and jumping up into the play, like, to me, there's a domino effect with all of this stuff, right, guys? Like, if you bring in better defensemen and you bring in guys that, and part of that is better possession defensemen is what I mean, then it's going to have a trickle-down effect on the rest of the team. And I think also the line combinations have helped as well. Like Dubois and Connor, great possession line with Svechnikov or Wheeler or whoever they're playing with. Obviously, Dubois, Connor, Svechnikov was the line that we've seen the most. And then you look at, Kopp, Scheifele, Ehlers, a great possession line. Like Lowry, Harkins, and then whoever is playing on that line, right? Like it could be Stastny, it could be Wheeler. Right now it's Svechnikov, right? We'll see what happens for the game on Monday. I wouldn't be surprised if Svechnikov is reunited with Connor and Dubois just because he played so well last night against Vancouver, right? But you're right, Drew. The Jets are a better possession team. It's just as simple as that this year. The expected goals, the kind of the shot differential, all of those types of advanced stats, the high danger chances. Like, you go back and you look at the first what has it been, 17 games of the season so far? If I can do my math,
I'm not doing math.
Yeah, I'm just bugging you guys. But the first 17 games of the season, for the most part, you'd say the Jets have outshot the other team, and you would say that they've kind of controlled those high danger chances and everything like that, right? So I think that's a result of the improved defense, but it's also, as I mentioned, some of those line combinations that maybe we didn't see as much of last year, right? Because you remember, we saw a little bit of Connor and Dubois together, but we know that Connor has been stable to Scheifele on that top line most of the time with Wheeler, right, Dave? So, yeah, I mean, you can just see it. I mean, the eye test matches the advanced stats, guys. Like we talked about the amount of games, the majority of the games this season, the Jets have managed to get at least 1 point. And, you haven't had that many games this year where you would say the Jets stole a game. And to me, that's the sign. To me, there's a few signs of a good team. One of the signs is a team that's really good at home, and another sign is a team that, oftentimes wins games in which, they weren't really in. And you could point to that LA game at home as being one of those games, but there's no
LA
doubt,
games even.
Yeah,
both
there's
LA games.
There's no doubt that the Jets, yeah, I would agree with that, Drew. The Jets are not a team, that is going to rely too much on Hellebuyck to make 35, 40 saves, anything like that. Like, this is a team that moves the puck quicker. They're a team that has the puck more often. And the numbers, kind of bear that out. So, yeah, do the Jets, have to improve in some areas like the penalty kill? Absolutely. But there's no doubt that, they're a much better possession team than they were last year and the year before.
Well, I agreed. And you know what I think that, again, this sort of surprised me a little bit is the Jets are, you think of the Jets, the way I thought of them, you think of them as a high-flying team and offensive first team. But the goals against for the Jets so far this year, 43 goals against, which puts them tied for 12th in the NHL. So the goals against have been pretty low as well. They're not, they're not loose at both ends of the ice. They're not, cheating on the defensive side to get offense like we had seen in the past previous few years. The offense is obviously going to still be there because, they are 10th tied 8th in the NHL in goals for, but they're also, they're keeping their own zone much cleaner than we're used to seeing. That to me was another one of those sort of, as I took a step back in preparing for this morning's show, you get away from the immediacy of the post-game shows, you take a step back and you look at the big picture of the team. That was one that sort of jumped out at me because I thought they would be, I didn't think they were going to be in the bottom, the bottom third of the league in terms of goals against, but to be in the, closer to the top 10 than say number 18, 19, 20, I was a little surprised about that.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you're going to have to be able to be comfortable in is what we saw in Edmonton when it's a 1-1 game. And and you don't score till late. I mean, that was as close to a playoff game, especially like a quarter of the way through the season that you could have expected to see between two teams. Which is it's funny because there was an article I think in the Athletic yesterday. The idea that players are disappointed that they went away from that baseball style schedule. While I wouldn't have wanted to see like necessarily, because I think from a fan weariness perspective, I mean, even though you see it in the AHL, right? Moose are playing the Admirals 3 games in a row. That's more of a cost thing.
Put the antlers on. Put the antlers on. You said the word moose. Put the antlers on.
But anyways, so I think one of those things that I remember like going back. I think it was 2012 when the Jets played that critical back-to-back against Washington. Although that was the rare home, both in Winnipeg games, but folks like that. I think it builds something, and so players like it. Sometimes, I mean, like I said, whether it's in the same city or just a home and home, especially when it's an easy home and home like Winnipeg and Edmonton, I think you build something from that, and we saw that intensity. But that's the kind of game you're going to have to be comfortable to play. You have to be able to win those kind of games, and obviously the Jets lost in a shootout, but who cares? Because again, there's no shootouts in the playoffs, so it doesn't make a difference. And they had plenty of opportunity, and I think that's the kind of game you need to see a Jets team feel comfortable playing. And don't get me wrong, they still gave up a lot of high danger chances, but it's Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. So that's just a reality of who you're playing against. Ezzy and I were talking about it. That's, two of the best players in the game. You just have to pick your poison and realize that things are going to happen. You can't nullify those guys every game, but the Jets have done a fairly good job. I mean, Draisaitl still got 2 goals, in the previous game, in the game in Winnipeg. But that's just, I think, what the Jets team is doing. And like I said, they did have a big personnel change, right? With the change over in defense and trying to go from a patchwork defense to a more solid, established defense that we've seen now for 17 games. Obviously, with the 11-7, you had Nate Beaulieu in there as well. But I think that's just a function of a team that's coming together. And, I know fans are upset about what they saw in Vancouver yesterday, but like, I think Drew, you said it, you got to step back and look at the big picture.
Can't win every single game.
Well, yeah. And that's what we said last night. And I think that, when you look at the big picture and you look at a Jets team that right now is battling for the top of the Central, that's roughly where everyone would have expected them to be. So that's where they are. I mean, it's not as if you expected the Jets to have like 5, 6, 7 more points. I mean, they could have quite easily if we go through it and we look at points, given away in certain contests. But at the end of the day, like, this is a Jets team that's changing who they are. They've had to change their makeup because suddenly you're seeing it, right? You've got better possession numbers, a thing that the Jets didn't traditionally have because they were so heavily reliant on Connor Hellebuck. So now they're changing that narrative a bit. And so it's taking some adjustment. But like I said, it's not going to be perfect every single game. But you want to hope, if you're a Jets fan, that you can play that Edmonton-style game, either one,
pick
moving on into the future. And that's what we said. You said you have to be able to continue that effort into the season, throughout the course of the season. Sorry.
That's exactly, we said that on Thursday's post-game show. I thought Ezzy made some great points on Thursday's.
That was a great post-game show. Probably one of the best post-game shows we've ever done.
You especially. I thought you really brought your A game to Thursday's post-game show, Ezzy. But that's what we talked about. We talked about the Jets, playing and succeeding in different styles of games. The game on Tuesday against the Oilers, which was probably, I'm going to say it was the Jets' most complete game of the season, and certainly the most complete victory of the season against a very high-quality opponent. They absolutely took it to the Oilers. And, that game was a little bit looser, wasn't quite as tight checking, more room to move, more skating room. And then on Thursday, it was a much different game, much more tight checking. You said it, Dave. Much more reminiscent of a playoff style where it's tooth and nail for every inch on the ice, and the Jets showed that they can succeed in that style of game as well. I mean, that ability to change your approach and play different styles of game and succeed at different styles of game makes you a very dangerous opponent, because it means that sort of teams know that they can't pick one style and you're going to struggle with it. That when you play the Jets, it's, pick your poison as to how you want to compete against them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you saw it last night, right? With the physicality from Brendan Dillon and Logan Stanley getting into the scrap, right? And I think, if there's one style of team or type of team that gives the Jets the most problem, we saw it against the Islanders. Like, to me, again, not just, I always joke, I picked the Islanders to win the cup. So that obviously means, they're not going to win the cup. But this Islanders team, the way they shut other teams down, like, I think that's the type of game. I'm not saying the Jets can't win a 2-1 game. That's not at all what I'm saying. But I just think, with that type of opponent who just plays an all-around good team defense, that's the type of game, the Jets are maybe not as complete of a team, or not as dominant of a team. They don't look as dominant, right? Like, I'm not saying that the Jets played poorly against the Islanders. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that those are the types of teams that succeed in the playoffs. And the Jets are obviously one of those teams that want to succeed in the playoffs. And I think, they have all of the ingredients. We talked about it, last week. Like, the Jets are not that far off, from being that complete team. And, we've got Kenny Weeb coming up in about 10 minutes here. And I thought, his article earlier this week kind of talking about, what those two games against the Oilers showed us. And you mentioned it, like, if Connor McDavid didn't score that unbelievable goal, like,
yeah,
I got to mention that again. Like, I don't think there's a word in the English language that could really describe how nice that goal was. But if he doesn't score that goal, the Jets
probably at least 10 or 20 words in the English language.
Yeah, you know what I mean. I mean, it's just only he can do that, right? But,
I know.
I think they. So what I was saying is that they wouldn't have allowed, the Jets, that is, wouldn't have allowed an even strength goal. That was the only even strength goal they allowed, right? Because Draisaitl scored the 2 power play goals in the game in Winnipeg, right? So if you can, hold one of the best offensive teams in the league to 1 even strength goal in 2 games. I mean, we saw that last year in the playoffs against the Oilers. The Jets, even, before they acquired Schmidt and Dillon, had the ability to shut other teams down. But I think now, as Dave mentioned, they have the type of defenseman that complements their speedy forwards. And I think that's the biggest difference. Like, the MO of the Jets is obviously, like, get that puck, move that puck up the ice. You have the ability for guys like Morrissey or Pionk or Schmidt or even Dillon to, bring the puck up the ice, but they have such speedy forwards, skilled forwards. Get the puck up to them, get something going. It's just been a much different team out of their own end this year.
Well, I think that, and I mean, I think it's just such an easier game to play for the players themselves. I mean, I can't even imagine how frustrating it must be to be on a team that, cannot really get the puck out of your own zone.
Mm-hmm.
That, and which is what the Jets were the last couple of years, where it's just a absolute struggle. It's, impossible to move up the ice with any sort of pace, with any sort of skill. You're just desperate trying to get the puck out of your own zone at any given opportunity. It must make it so frustrating to play on a team like that is just always hemmed into their own zone, very much like the Oilers were, a few years back, before Darnell Nurse really continued his development and before the team had shored up their defense. I mean, it was just,
although he needs a nurse because he broke his finger in the overtime.
For 3 to 4 weeks, and so is Slater Cuckoo. He's out, around a month or so as well. So the Oilers are going to be in tough a little bit. They're going to have, again, their defense is now going to suffer a little bit in that the guys that they're bringing in might not be as adept at getting the puck out of their own zone, and you'll see what it does to their entire team, much like it would for the Jets if they lost 2 of their puck moving defensemen, and they'd be fighting tooth and nail and just desperate to get the puck. We haven't seen that desperation in their game in getting the puck out of their own zone very often. I mean, that's a huge difference, and I think you just see how much easier it is to play.
Mm-hmm.
When you don't have to constantly dwell on how are we going to get the puck out of our own zone, Dave.
Yeah, and one of the things the NHL Network had a stat yesterday, I think they said most stretch pass completions, and Nate Schmidt was first with 60 in the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think that kind of speaks to the point you're making, Drew, right? Is that these guys are much more adept at getting that puck, controlling it, and then getting it up to the forwards in a quick manner and allowing them to break out. So, look, I mean, like I said, it's a new reality for the Winnipeg Jets in that you have a much better defensive squad than you did in the past. And I think maybe going into yesterday, the Jets were even ahead of the 2017-18 team where they were, in their kind of start of the season. So sure. I think maybe because they lost yesterday, maybe I don't know. I didn't look at the updated numbers, but I think it's interesting, right? Because you are seeing parallels with a more cohesive group that's clearly, feeling good about their game. And look, guys aren't necessarily lighting it up that you expect, right? Mark Scheifele isn't lighting it up right now offensively. So, that's kind of one of those things, right? Like other guys have stepped up their game in the absence of Wheeler producing and Scheifele producing. So you have Dubois, he's got 10 goals already. I mean, who would have predicted Pierre-Luc Dubois having 10 goals in his first 17 games? I don't know how many people. I don't think many. Even despite the fact that everyone thought he was going to have a bounce back, I don't think everyone was expecting quite this kind of this significant of a bounce back. And then you've got Kyle Connor producing like crazy. So when you have guys stepping up in the absence of others, that's a good thing. But now you've got to think that once the Scheifeles get going, once if Blake Wheeler can get going and get something going again. And like I said, even if that's in a reduced role,
sure,
who cares? I mean, because the reality is this: if you're Blake Wheeler, and I know everybody he doesn't need another contract. So if the Jets win the Stanley Cup and Blake Wheeler has 40 points this year or 20 points this year, what do you care? You don't care because, I mean, it shouldn't matter anyways because the money's already spent, like I said last night. So, if you get Blake Wheeler in a reduced role, you have someone else, you've got Ehlers, Koppen, and Scheifele going, and you've got Dubois, Connor, let's say Svechnikov going, and then you've got Stasny, Wheeler, and Lowry, potentially going, and then you've got a fourth line of, Harkins and Vesalainen, Toninato, Nash, whomever, whatever that composition looks like, Gustafson. But I'm saying, like, if whatever that ends up looking like, you should be able to be an effective team. So that to me is like, that's kind of I would say a positive, despite the fact that these guys aren't producing, is that you're having success despite the fact that these guys haven't produced at the level you're expecting them to.
And, I just wanted to throw in one thing just to follow up on Dave's point there, Drew. Like, I agree, Dave. Like, so far the Jets have had a lot of success without, Scheifele and Wheeler putting the puck in the net a lot. And I think, it's going to be really interesting to see this next stretch, right? Starting off with Pittsburgh Monday at home. It's kind of a little bit of a weird situation, right? Where you only have the one home game and then you go back on the road for, was it 3 in a row or 4 in a row? And then you have 3 in a row. And then you have the back-to-back against Minnesota and Calgary. And then you've also got Columbus in there, right, on Wednesday. And, Columbus is playing much better, guys. And we know Minnesota and the Jets are tied right now. And Calgary has been one of the, surprise teams. Speaking of, guys that have been putting up a lot of goals, Andrew Mangiapane, what's he up to? 10 or 11 goals now. I should know. I took him in my hockey pool really late. He's been an absolute great pick. Might be a candidate for Team Canada, even though it's going to be tough for him. But, Calgary, Minnesota, I mean, these are good teams. Columbus, I mean, Line A is obviously not going to be in the lineup. Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to have the extra motivation. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see, these next 4 games, because we know that, Blake Wheeler, Mark Scheifele, these guys are still, their game is still not where they would like it to be. I think they would tell you that themselves. So I think, there's going to be new tests coming up over the next week.
Somebody whose game is always where we want it to be is our next guest. Ken Wiebe joins us on the show. Weber, good morning. Nice of you to shut down the Kenny and Rennie post-game show a little bit early in order to join us 8 hours into your broadcast.
Boys, always a pleasure to be with you. And it was a long week on a lot of levels, for sure. Lots of things happening, but a lot of good things happening as well, including, as you're talking about Columbus, a trip to Columbus on the horizon, which I'm quite excited for. And it will also include a trip to Minnesota for that afternoon tilt and the Black Friday affair. And I'm also going to tie in a visit to North Dakota on the Saturday. I won't be heading to Calgary because of the not quarantine rules, but because of the border issues. Chaz Lucius returned to the Minnesota Golden Gophers lineup last night, so I'm going to have a chance to watch him live for the first time on the Saturday night. So it's a power-packed week coming up, and had a few late nights and a few fun nights. But it's good to be with you guys in the morning. I know we have a little bit to talk about, I'm guessing here.
Nothing at all. I don't know what you're talking about there, Kenny. Nice to see from you this morning. That'll be an exciting trip. The Vikings, you can't squeeze in a Vikings game as well?
Well, that's a road game, I believe, in San Fran. So unless I can, unless the primetime Deion Sanders jet is coming my way, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it a hat trick weekend, if you will.
Yeah, that's unfortunate timing, but I'm sure you'll survive that inconvenience a little bit and see your Vikes at some point in time in the next couple of weeks or next few months, whatever it might be. But we're not talking about the Vikings as much as you and I would enjoy doing that. We're talking about the Winnipeg Jets. Obviously, Kenny, a good week if you look at it strictly from a standings perspective. 2-1-1 in the 4 games they played this week. This team is, I think, is a good team. I mean, it might be a little simplistic, but you look at their record and you'd say that's a good team. You look at their advanced stats, you'd say that's a good team. So if you're sitting here today, a team that's, the Jets 17 games into their season, almost at the quarter mark of their year, what is the area that they need to shore up the most? Is it penalty killing? Is that the number one concern as you sit here today from your perspective?
For sure. For all the question marks coming into the season, I would say, Paul Maurice can slice it and dice it any way that he wants. And yes, it is true. If they took out the 10 goals in the first 5 games of the season that they allowed while shorthanded, the numbers would look great. But guess what? You don't get to. There's no eraser on that one. So
if you and I had hair, we'd be male models, but we don't have hair.
Again, he is also right about the second part of the equation. They have been better while shorthanded of late, but you're still digging out of that massive hole. And as Adam Lowry so aptly pointed out, in the NHL, 60% or somewhere near that number is not going to get it done. So that number needs to improve. The fact that the Jets went 2 for 2 on Thursday against the Oilers' vaunted power play, that I think would give them a little bit of confidence. But on Friday, they gave up 2 against a Canucks team that was struggling. So positionally, I think they need to be a little bit better. The reads have at times been very good, but when the reads have been slightly off, they've ended up in the back of the net. So to me, that's their biggest area of concern. And what I was probably most impressed by, or what caught my attention, leading to another topic that we would like to discuss, the thought that Paul Maurice mentioned of having, the being open to potentially changing different people into the penalty kill. That was kind of music to my ears, and naturally would lead me to believe that the consideration for the Gus bus filling up with a few seats certainly caught my attention. That's not to say maybe I was hearing something that I wanted to hear, but to me that has to be a consideration. As Dave pointed out, I mean, going into yesterday's game, the Moose had the best penalty kill in the American Hockey League. I know they went down to 4th place, but this is a 1 + 1 = 2 situation for me. If you have someone who is contributing to that penalty kill at the American League level, and also just happens to have 12 points in 15 games, and your 4th line isn't really getting a lot done right now, I would say there's a good opportunity here at some point. I don't know that it's going to be for Monday night's game, but I think that has to be if you're in the coaches meeting, this has to be something that you're discussing. And if, when Paul Maurice makes that phone call to Mark Morrison, Dave, you'd know this more than I would because of the viewings. But to me, there is an opportunity available for having this player jump up, at least to give it a test drive, right? For all the things the Jets are doing, if you're calling up David Gustafsson, you're not dropping off anything except in raw experience. But this isn't a 20-year-old rookie that you're calling up and asking him to tread water. He's played in the NHL. He's got ample time of professional experience, and the things that he does to make the people around him better, both at even strength and on the penalty kill with his own reads, to me, the door is wide open. The door is ajar, as the old saying goes. The door is ajar. David is trying to kick it down, and it's just a matter of time. I don't know when that time will come, but I think we're getting closer to that time. And again, there's effort from Dominic Toninato and Riley Nash. No one's questioning the effort. But right now, the Jets are on the sort of in that spot where, as you mentioned, Drew, they're a good team, but they have the potential to be great. And I think one of the ways to make their team better is to give David Gustafsson a shot to see what he can do.
Let me ask you this, though, Kenny.
Yeah,
Sorry,
go
I
ahead,
just
Drew.
ask one follow-up there. I mean, I don't have any problem with anything you've just said. To me, as much as it is a personnel issue on the penalty kill, it's also an approach issue. I just see the penalty kill as so passive. And it's been that way for a number of years now, that I wonder if, maybe with a guy like Gustafsson, who's had such success on the PK, if maybe alongside with that could come a slight change of approach. You see some teams that have not a reckless penalty kill, but maybe a little bit more of an aggressive penalty kill, and the Jets just don't have anything that I think it just lets the other team have so much time to be able to process their next move, that's to me an area that I'd like to see maybe a little bit of a tweak as well, just a little more aggression on the penalty kill.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I thought the Jets were better in that area in terms of being a little bit more aggressive against the Oilers the other night. I mean, there is a little bit more movement, and the pressure points are there. It's tough to attack, and if you attack the pressure points when the other team is ready for that attack, it ends up in the back of your net in the snap of a finger. So there's definitely a balance. I think part of the reason the Jets have looked a bit tentative on the penalty kill is because of the goals that have been allowed. I think when a team goes on a nice run of killing a bunch of penalties off, then the aggressive attack you'll see more often, and the reads are easier to make. And I mean, we know that Andrew Kopp and Adam Lowry have done a great job together for a very long time. They know when to attack, but as a complete unit, they've got a couple different guys in there. I think right now they're just sort of battling to get to the right spots. And then, you could go, we saw this earlier in the year. The Jets would go like a minute 45 and a minute 50 and have like 4 clears and have what looked to be a clean sheet. And then they gave up one in the last 8 seconds. So it's really difficult to, you always talk about the process. Well, if you're a penalty killer and you're like, man, everything was so good until it ended up in the back of the net. So, of course, you want to think about the good things you did during the 145, but at the end of the day, you're looking up at the stats sheet and you're looking at 60 or sub 60%, and your team is 31st, and you're like, we're better than this. So there's a little bit of chicken and egg going there, Drew. I don't think the Jets are passive by nature on the penalty kill. I just think some of that passivity has been a byproduct of the goals that have been allowed with such great frequency. And I think that the only way you dig yourself out of it is by stringing a bunch of successful kills together, which can be challenging at times, as we've seen. But I think I think the pieces are there, and it's just a matter of kind of getting into a little bit of a groove. But this isn't just a one-off. I mean, there have been a few years where the Jets have got themselves into a big hole, and then the percentages haven't added up. I mean, I think only the 1 year that I can remember the Jets were either top 10 or top half of the league was 17-18, right? And that they had a lot of things go well for them in that year, as we know. But the penalty kill was obviously one of them, and I don't think there's a help wanted sign out. I think they have the personnel to get it done. It's just a matter of the execution, and that's something that I think players like Adam Lowry and Andrew Kopp and everyone who's on the penalty kill take a lot of pride in. And I would be surprised if that area does not improve. I mean, we also saw it a couple years ago where the Jets were the worst for the longest time, and then after January 1st, they somehow became the best again. So we've seen the sort of the sine curve with the penalty kill at times for the Jets, and I would think there would be an opportunity to be back on the upswing at some point here. There you go. I'm not saying this is an overnight fix, but I think they can definitely improve in that area for sure.
I agree with you, Kenny, and you can only go up, right? Like, it's been a bad, 17 games, but I agree. I mean, I can't disagree with anything that you said there. I think, this is not a bottom 5, penalty kill at the end of the year. I think it will get better. And obviously, as you mentioned early, the first 5 or 6 games of the season when it seemed like it didn't seem, the Jets were giving up 2 power play goals a game. That really hurt them. So I do think it is going to get better, and it is going to be sooner rather than later. And Ken, I wanted to ask you about, I really liked your article a couple of days ago talking about the Jets mini series against the Oilers and how that answered a lot of questions about the Jets. And you talked about not only, did you get, 3 of a possible 4 points, and you only gave up a couple aside from those 2 power play goals. That was maybe one of the, most dominant games from the Jets. And then, Connor McDavid decides to go all Connor, McJesus on us and, get that incredible goal like only he can. But aside from that, that was the only even strength goal they got. But is this really, these 2 games against the Oilers, maybe notwithstanding the game against the Canucks last night, which was a pretty good, effort, as well. Does this just show us that this Jets team, can win those low scoring games if they need to, and they still have the ability to shut down Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl at least for, 95% of the time?
Yeah, a couple things really key for me in that one is I think that the structure held up, right? I mean, that was one of those where you wonder how, the house is being built, what's the foundation like? You were hearing all this talk about commitment and, back pressure and being connected, 5-man unit. There have been some high event hockey games between those two teams where the structure has pretty much gone right out the second floor window, and both coaches have kind of been left there saying, this is really fun to watch, but what are you guys doing right now? Because you're not doing what we're asking you to do. So the fact that the Jets were able to have their top two lines and top two pairings really do a nice job of containing Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid at 5-on-5. Did they get their chances? Of course. Well, guess what? They're two of the best players, if not the two best players in the NHL right now. They're going to get their chances. But I would argue that McDavid, especially in the Tuesday night game, did not generate the level of chances we're used to him seeing. And I get it. Yeah, 5th game of a long road trip. Sure. I mean, this is a guy, he still did, 10th consecutive regular season game where he had 2 points against the Jets. They were both on the power play, and they were great plays. But this was not a situation where the Jets were hanging on for dear life in their own zone and were kind of wondering, with their heads spinning, how do we stop this guy? The Jets were, they played a great gap game. They were very tenacious, and they did something that was surprising to me. They dictated the pace of play against Connor McDavid's line, which is incredibly difficult to do because he's the fastest player in the NHL. So the fact that their structure held up, they didn't get away from it. I mean, there was that moment in the third period after the 2 power play goals when Leon Draisaitl found Jesse Puljujärvi in the slot. And, if that goal goes bar down instead of Connor Hellebuyck getting big and making it hit him, if it gets to 4-3, now all of a sudden you're looking at a hair on fire situation and, can you get the people out of the classroom for the fire drill? It didn't get to that point because of the great save Hellebuyck made. The Jets got immediately back into their structure and said, hey, we're the team dictating the play here, not the Oilers. There's a push happening, but get back to what we're doing. So to me, that's what they did. And the other thing that held up, not only the structure, we talked so much about clean exits and the outlet passes that are being made by the Jets defensemen, which has led to them spending much less time in their defensive zone this year. That's been a huge key. And to be able to do that against the Oilers in both games, all we heard about going into Thursday, hey, that's not us, that's not the Oilers. Well, the Jets had 17 shots on goal in the first period on the next night when this big push was happening. So to me, those were some really important signs. And the other thing too, how many times have we heard from the fan base in the last couple of years, the Jets aren't generating enough, where are the shots on goal? Well, 40 plus the last 2 nights, and especially on a night when, yes, we know the Jets were a little, the old unleaded tank was not quite at empty, but it was pretty close. But they still managed to pile up a bunch of shots, and they got bubble Demko'd last night. I mean, that's a fact. I mean, did they play their best game? No, but they still had enough opportunities generated in that game to win the game. And the other thing too, they didn't stray away from their structure even in a game where they were chasing the game by 2 goals. They gave themselves a chance late, and they could have easily, in a game that, I wouldn't say they had no business winning, but they gave themselves a chance in a game where they were clearly behind it and they were chasing it, even after having that little bit of a push when, the goal happened.
Ken Wiebe is our guest Saturday morning. You're watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube. We're live on all of our social media platforms. You know Ken from his great work with Sportsnet, sportsnet.ca, and, of course, the Kenny and Rennie Show as well. Ken, happy birthday also, by the way.
On your game, as usual. Yes, very good, very good.
Only bring the A game when you're on with us.
Kenny, about 10 days ago for Sportsnet, you wrote about Mark Scheifele and how his game is changing because he, of course, hasn't had the season that he would have expected, or many would have expected, especially with the Olympics on the horizon and his desire to be on that team. So how are you seeing number 55 season progress so far, up into when you wrote that article and now in the 10 subsequent days?
Yeah, it's been impressive to watch the kind of transformation for sure. I mean, there have been some moments where, Mark Scheifele has been frustrated. There were, I think there was obviously we look at the Lemieux goal. It was a bit of an issue where I think some folks, I would call it confusion, because it was not a lack of effort. Like, Scheifele had to hustle to get himself into position to do the back checking, but then either he got confused thinking there was a trailer, or something there was a split second decision that happened there where he made the effort to get there. And then, it was just a very strange thing, but it was one of those things where he would have looked and said, man, what happened here? But I love the response from Mark Scheifele since that time, and not just because the points are starting to come. I love the fact that they put Nikolai Ehlers with Mark Scheifele as a way to get both players going, because at the time both players, I wouldn't say were struggling, but I would say they were not pumping at peak efficiency. And the fact that they have, very similarly to Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois, obviously they're playing a different style of games because of the explosiveness in the skating. When Kyle Connor's going, if you're Pierre-Luc Dubois, you got to get your feet moving. Same with Scheifele and Ehlers. There have been times where Scheifele needed some additional speed in his line. The line with Lowry and Wheeler was working, but Scheifele needs to be pushed in terms of the acceleration and getting the giddy up and go. And what I've seen from those two together has been impressive to watch. I was looking forward to seeing where these two guys are at in their careers, if they could get together and really mesh, and that's exactly what we've seen. They've really done a nice job together, not just offensively. I like the fact that they were very limited in terms of what they were giving up, specifically on Thursday night, because you guys know this. When the game started and Mark Scheifele was out first and Dave Tippett said, "Yo, Connor, this is a matchup you've enjoyed the last few years. Get out there." Well, guess what? That line it wasn't even. That line won the 5-on-5 battle, 1-0. And there again, they weren't hanging on for dear life and hoping that Connor Hellebuck could bail them out. They did a nice job of dictating a lot of where the game was played. I mean, this is we talk about the Caramilk secret. Other coaches know you can only hope to contain McDavid and Draisaitl, but your best chance to do that is by making them play in their own zone, right? I mean, having to go 200 feet to get to the other end, and that line really did a great job of making sure that happened. And Andrew Kopp is also a big part of that, guys. Andrew Kopp is playing great. I know there were some people in our chat room, I'm sure it was the same with yours. Oh, well, the production's going down. Ooh. Point of game player, the production's going down. That gets an early wake up on a Saturday morning, folks. Let's go here. And Andrew Kopp, 6 shots on goal last night. He lost tons of opportunity, and he's generating for himself and for his line mates while still doing it as the defensive conscience on the line. So there's no issues with Andrew Kopp right now, or usually ever, but especially not right now. Back to the original question about Scheifele. I think that his game is definitely ticking upward, and it was doing so before the points started to come. I feel like there's like an avalanche of offense coming from Mark, and not because he's cheating for it. It feels like there's a lot of all this pent-up kind of energy happening. He's getting better looks, and I think that the most encouraging thing for the Jets would be how they're playing together with the interchanges. And man, because of Scheifele, you have to respect Scheifele's shot and his vision. Look at how often Nikolai Ehlers has got to the middle of the ice in the last couple of games here. He has buried several of those opportunities. But to me, it's his ability to dart in and out. But those two guys really start to be seeming. We know the Kopp and Scheifele have chemistry. When they've played together, they've been able to generate often. To me, the fact that Ehlers and Scheifele now are starting to get clicking, that would be a scary proposition for the opponent. And I do think, too, we've talked about this before, guys, the fact that the Jets have Dubois and Scheifele going at the same time, that makes them incredibly difficult to defend. And man, oh man, if you're a team running the opposition's defense pairings, you're thinking, oh boy, I mean, again, this is not Draisaitl McDavid, but you're thinking, who you got to have to try to stop here? Like, this is legitimately how people have to be looking. You love the challenge if you're that player, but you're like, it's a relentless kind of pursuit. And I really like the way that Scheifele's played, Dave. I mean, I think that he's trending upward, and you're right. I mean, because of the Olympic, he kind of, he's back from a deficit position, right? You missed all that time. You had the suspension, you had the COVID situation, you had the Charlie horse. Now Mark seems to kind of be getting into his groove, and he has to, because look at some of the other guys that are competing for those same kind of jobs. I mean, he is chasing from a deficit position. It's not too late for him to, he's in the mix already. To solidify a spot, he needs to continue to play at an elite level for a considerable amount of time, and I think he's trending in that direction.
Let's talk about a player who doesn't seem to be trending in a positive direction. The elephant in the room. You know who we're talking about, Kenny.
Sure.
Blake Wheeler, obviously just a terrible penalty to take in last night's game. Undisciplined, unnecessary. Still looking for his first goal of the year. It's certainly not for a lack of effort, because you can't ever accuse a player for a lack of effort. Is Paul Maurice putting Blake Wheeler in the best position to succeed? Does part of the blame, I mean, we know how reliant Maurice has been on Wheeler over the last number of years. Is it time for Maurice to maybe put Wheeler in a better position than how he's been deployed as of late?
Yeah, you know what? I don't mind the premise. As you guys know, Sean and I have been arguing about this, debating for the last several games.
Hey, brothers argue. You know what?
Yeah, exactly. And I have no issue with the thought process behind putting Blake Wheeler in that line. I think that, and despite what Paul said publicly, it was an effort to get Blake going. He had been generating chances. It was to try to get him through this little bit of a slump. I mean, I think that there's no doubt about that. I thought Wheeler was excellent on Tuesday night, not just in the checking role. He was in on the forecheck, using his body. And, part of the reason there were 15 shots on goal for his line mates was attributed to Blake Wheeler. I don't think, not solely because of him, but he contributed to the success that line had. I think the last two games were not vintage Wheeler. I think, as you mentioned, the effort was there. Right now I'm seeing a player that is trying to do too much. And you can tell with the puck handling. I would say that the power play in overtime was a great example. Blake Wheeler is one of the best distributors in the National Hockey League. And the aging curve does not affect your ability to transport the puck. But a lot of the one-timer passes were slightly off. So to me, we know that Blake Wheeler is incredibly confident, but right now he's not operating at that level we're used to seeing. I do think that it was worth trying, but I think that at practice on Sunday, I would like to see Blake Wheeler with Paul Stastny and Adam Lowry. I think, and that's not a demotion. That's a situation where, as you mentioned, Drew, I think right now we are learning also on the fly about the impacts of COVID, not just on any player, but on a 35-year-old with a lot of miles on the odometer. I don't think that for 1 second Blake Wheeler is done or that he can't make a contribution, but right now, putting him out against top-line competition and asking him to play 22 minutes or 20 minutes, that's a lot to ask of anyone right now. So I think, to your point about putting him in a better position to succeed, I think playing Blake Wheeler against third line competition and allowing him to get his confidence, not his personal confidence, but his puck handling confidence, his shooting confidence back up, would be a smart decision. And the good news for Paul Maurice, you're not guessing. You have a built-in not succession plan, but you have a built-in backup plan that has proven to be pretty effective in the early stages. I love the way that Svechnikov played with Adam Lowry. I think it gave that line a little bit more of an identity the last 3 games or so, but I think you could put Svechnikov back up and you're not losing anything in that scenario. You're losing experience, but you're not losing anything in terms of how the line is produced previously. And I also think that you just don't put addition. I think there's additional, again, if you're making $8.25 million, there's pressure on you. Paul Edmonds described it. Blake Wheeler's like the CEO, right? You're making the big bucks. A lot of the decisions, not the decisions in terms of what is happening in deployment and all that, but a lot of things are running through you. You're the captain of the team. You're the leader. You set the tempo, set the culture, all of those things. Right now, Blake Wheeler doesn't need and Paul Maurice isn't saying, hey, Blake, pick it up offensively. He's not saying that at all. But by putting him in a situation where you could play him with Lowry, who we know he had success with coming back from COVID, and Paul Stastny, a player he's very familiar with, respects a great deal, and has been a line mate of at Team USA, in Germany with the Jets, this is not a demotion. This is not a, hey man, you need to pick it up, go over here. This is let's go over here, do the things that you're good at. We know what your skill set is. Just take a deep breath here. This is like kind of an Aaron Rodgers special where, get more by doing less, but not trying less, but just go back, like try to take a little bit of the pressure off yourself right now. We know that slow starts have happened to Blake Wheeler before, including his first year, where I think it took 19 games for him to get his first goal. He puts an enormous amount of pressure on himself. Of course, he knows how to deal with it, but right now, giving him a little bit less responsibility, and I also think a little bit less ice time. I think that you can get, because of the effort that you mentioned, Drew, because of the effort that is exuded on those shifts, it's hard to stay out for 35, 45 seconds with Connor and Dubois based on the pace they're playing at. And that's not to say Blake Wheeler can't keep up. He's been a good skater his whole career, but right now he's not getting to the same spots he was getting to before. So you have to put him in a position where he can relax and just get back to playing his game. And I think that will help him at 5-on-5. And I think it'll help him on the power play where, one of the, two of the biggest surprises, the Jets power play, despite going 1 for 16 now in the last several games, I think it's 1 point for Wheeler and 1 power play goal for Kyle Connor. For Kyle Connor, that's an unbelievable job of having 11, even, at even strength or empty net goals. But this guy led the Jets in power play goals last year. Wheeler has consistently been a top-level producer with the power play. I think right now he's pressing a little bit, and by giving him a little bit less responsibility, I think it would allow him to kind of find his footing a little bit more and get back to being the offensive force that we've seen in the past.
I love it, Kenny. That breakdown was unbelievable. And for those who didn't hear it earlier, take a deep breath. Wheeler is going to be fine. I love it, Kenny.
Hang on. No, you got to challenge. Kenny mentioned Aaron Rodgers. There's only one thing you can say. RELAX, relax, like Aaron Rodgers.
Sorry, I got to get the quote right. I got to get a quote right. And sorry, that was a long trip to the buffet line there for the folks that have been watching our shows.
No, absolutely, no. I love it. I mean, we love having you on, Kenny. I'm loving the breakdown and talking about the last few weeks, last couple of games here. And you mentioned the third line with Lowry and Svechnikov, and I agree with you. I think nobody would have a problem with Svechnikov going back up with Connor and Dubois. But the guy I wanted to ask you about, because Dave is driving the Gus bus, I think I've taken over the Jansen Harkins booster club, because I mean, I realize he had a goal against San Jose, and that was only his second goal of the game. But he had 5 shots, if I'm not mistaken, in that game in Edmonton, the second game against the Oilers. And to me, he's playing the best hockey, of his season right now. And the question I wanted to ask you about Harkins is, what is kind of has anything changed in your opinion about how he could be used based on how he's played over the last, let's say, 3, 4, 5 games? Because I think he's kind of been a little bit of the forgotten man with, the healthy scratches last year. And then obviously, the emergence of some other players, namely Svechnikov, and Harkins was kind of, just thought of as, maybe you get, a good 9 or 10 minutes of him on the fourth line. But to me, I would love to see him more on the penalty kill and even on the power play. You mentioned you think an avalanche of goals is coming for Scheifele, Kenny. To me, I think Harkins is maybe not going to get as many goals, but he's getting those opportunities. He's shooting more. So I've just really liked how he's played the last week and a half.
Yeah, he's been tenacious, Ezzy. I mean, we talked earlier in this year who was going to be that chaos creator like Matthew Perreault, right? Who was going to be getting in on the forecheck and kind of disrupting things? Obviously, different players. With Jansen Harkins doing such a nice job of working on his speed game. So I've liked a lot of what I've seen from Harkins as well. I think early in the year you saw a player who, again, this had not been, as Dave knows, this has not been a linear path for Jansen Harkins. He basically went from a guy who was supposed to be a first-round pick was a second-round pick. There was a little bit of a slow start. You had your brief period in Jacksonville in the ECHL. You come back to the American League. You get reset. You find your ground in the second half. You come back. You're leading the American League in scoring. And all of a sudden you've gone from, I wouldn't say that Harkins ever reached forgotten prospect status, but he was certainly on that, when is this guy going to be getting here kind of stage of his career. Oh, and then he was here. And then there's a cameo with Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele in Buffalo, and there's a glimpse of here, and then there's kind of up and down, and then now he's kind of struggling to get in the lineup, and then there's a wrister against Calgary in the play-in round, and you're thinking, whoa, there's the Jansen Harkins that we've been seeing, and then things just kind of have been up and down for him. It can be frustrating as a player. You think you're kind of on the verge from not only being a regular in the NHL, but kind of being a real contributor. And then you're in and out of the lineup. You had the great camp. You have your groin injury. You kind of have a hodgepodge of things. And now you're on the taxi squad. You're not on the taxi squad, but you're skating with the taxi squad guys. And what do I got to do to get an opportunity here? And then now the opportunity comes. He's always been a guy who, much like Jack Roslovic, always ready. We go back to those Young Stars camps in Penticton. One of the best players in those events was always Jansen Harkins because of his off-season preparation. And he sort of was able to carry that over with a strong camp. And when there was an opportunity on the third line, I thought he did a nice job with it. I think there's always, still work. I think there's some symmetry there with Adam Lowry for sure. Can he kind of play that Mason Appleton role at some point? I mean, I think there's potential there. But I also think that Jansen's a guy that's got to constantly be pressing, right? He's in that situation where it's right there for you, but now you're going to have to just grab it because there's some other guys on the depth chart that are pushing for spots, much like how Harkins was able to leapfrog a few players in order to work his way up the depth chart. There's some players in the Jets organization, whether it's a Perfetti or a David Gustafson, like there's some guy, and then he last year was competing for ice time with Vesalainen. So that the struggle is real. Like you're always constantly battling when there's someone looking for the same job as you. The moment you can stop looking over your shoulder and just do the things that you're good at, that's when you usually see these breakthroughs. And Ezzy, I think that's sort of what you were getting at. I think there have been some moments for Harkins where he's really started to show that potential. Now here, I mentioned it earlier. Now here comes another challenge. When Paul Stastny comes back, I don't see Paul Stastny being on the fourth line. So I think the chances are pretty high that he's going to be asked now to be back in a fourth line role when Stastny returns. How do you handle that? The best way to handle it is by continuing to play your behind off and showing some of those flashes you were showing when you were playing higher up the lineup and with better players. So that's the next test for Harkins. And you want to get to the point where Harkins is saying, you have no choice, Paul Maurice, but to play me more because of the way that I'm playing. I think that's the approach he will take. Dave, you'd know this from being around him. He's kind of a soft-spoken guy. He's never going to be out saying, I need more ice time. But he does it by effort, and he does it by putting in the extra work, by staying on late, by, huddling up with Dave Lowry, kind of saying, okay, what do I need to work on? Well, let's work on our board play today. Oh, let's work on quick release from the slot today at the end of practice. So I'm with you, as I think I've seen some encouraging signs there, but now there's probably another test around the corner and don't get me wrong, it's a tough challenge. It's a tough spot to be in where you feel like you're constantly having to prove yourself. Guess what? There's a lot of players in that situation, and as much as sometimes it could be taxing mentally, it's something that you need to do when you're in that situation and you're Jansen Harkins. And the better you get at it, the whole comfortable being uncomfortable, that applies directly to Jansen Harkins right now, and he's handling himself well, but the challenges will continue.
Kenny, we've done the show for almost an hour, just over an hour now, and in our dialogue with you, you touched on the Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois pairing, but I really want to get in depth with you on them because, I don't know which story is better: the bounce back of Pierre-Luc Dubois or Kyle Connor. I mean, we've been talking about it all season. A guy we expect to hit 30 and 30, or a little bit. I mean, he just seems to have taken his game to another level. And he talked about it in one of the availabilities about how he felt like he actually improved during this offseason. But I mean, it's almost as good a story, I think, what we're seeing, the emergence of Kyle Connor as one of the most dominant players, a guy who often got overlooked on this team. And Pierre-Luc Dubois being able to bounce back the way he has, the way many of us expected, but maybe not to the degree that he has already.
Yeah, two great stories, and I'll start with Kyle Connor, just because I mentioned the visit to see Chaz Lucius. I can't wait to see him live because I had the opportunity to watch Kyle Connor in Michigan at the end of a Jets trip during that amazing freshman season when he played with Tyler Mott and JT Compher. It was a game against Penn State.
Connor was flying around. It was a blowout. That was, one of the best. It was the best line in college hockey that year. But the one thing about Kyle Connor, and he won't necessarily admit it, but he was more of a perimeter player at the college level because of the speed that he had and the shot that he had and the skill that he had. He didn't really have to go to the dirty areas because of the guys he was playing with. I don't think it was a situation where he's like, I'm not going there, but he didn't have to go there. Well, right now, Kyle Connor is going everywhere. He's still scoring on the rush. He's using his speed and acceleration, but he's getting to the net. He's got a player. This is the beauty to me, Dave. They've been sort of pulling the best qualities from one another. Kyle Connor with a player draped all over him, getting to the net for a rebound goal. But then Pierre-Luc Dubois, after we've seen him put the shoulder down and go wide several times, pulling out a Kyle Connor shake and bake, going to the middle. I mean, these two guys are reading so well off each other. The chemistry is dynamic. I love the way both men are playing. Pierre-Luc Dubois' ability. Sorry, one more thing on Kyle Connor. I love the effort that we're seeing all over the ice. The biggest criticism about Kyle Connor, and at times it was warranted, defensive zone play. What are you doing along the boards? Can you get the puck out? What about the turnovers? Well, what about the back checks? What about all this? Well, there's no questions about that anymore. Kyle Connor is using his speed relentlessly with back pressure, pickpocketing guys on the forecheck. I know, even at the times where the Jets were this big burly team and tough to play against. Well, those days are over, but they're still tough to play against because of their ability to be tenacious on the forecheck. Kyle Connor is stripping defensemen of pucks in corners all day long, and you have to have incredible effort to get that done and commitment level. It's not like you're just hanging around waiting for your 10 shots on goal. You're not getting a Phil Kessel style here. You're not getting and that's not a knock on Phil Kessel, but if you're not seeing Phil Kessel on back pressure and, forward checking, you're seeing Phil Kessel using his shot and speed to create offensive opportunities. Kyle Connor is playing like a guy who not only wants to be on Team USA, he wants to be the driver of Team USA. He wants to be the first line winger. He wants to be the guy that Mike Sullivan and company will be counting on. And it's been an impressive, I wouldn't even say transformation, but this is a guy who was trending upward. He's right out of the rocket ship right now. He is just boom, right through the universe. And he's like, this is how I play now. So, it's impressive. In terms of Dubois, I've been, speaking of relentless, I was relentless in my defense of Pierre-Luc Dubois. And my conversation with him and those who knew him well during his quarantine last year after the trade painted a pretty important picture for me. And that's why too, some people saw it as excuses, but he went through a lot last year. And when you hear people that know him explain what kind of person he is, the accountability was never a factor for Pierre-Luc Dubois. He holds himself to a high standard. He wasn't playing up to that standard. He was disappointed when he didn't reach that standard. Well, guess what? That standard is still in effect, and he's not happy or content even when he's playing at almost a point a game level. I can do more. I want to be this player. I want to be the player that you can tap on the shoulder when it's 1-1 or 0-0 or 7-6. I want you to put me out on the ice when a team is defending a lead, chasing the lead, or looking to break a tie. I love all of that about him, but it's the way that he's played. He's a physical force, a powerful man. We saw glimpses early of this Dubois where, I'm in a puck battle with you, Drew, and I'm saying, sorry, not today. I will be coming out with this puck. You're not as strong as I am, and just try and get it away from me. And then the speed part of the game. And, he's not deferring to his line mates. Of course, he looks for them. When you have a guy like Kyle Connor, who is one of the elite shooters, of course you're going to look for him, but you're not looking for him when you know you should be shooting. And that's something that we didn't see as often from Dubois last year. His ability to use his speed and power, to me, it makes him one of the really dangerous players in the National Hockey League, and always the reminder that he's 23 years old. This is a guy who is, if you're Paul Maurice, and he's touched on it, this week during the, press conferences, this is a guy, this is not the ceiling for Pierre-Luc Dubois. This is, I'm not going to say it's the floor, but, the elevator is still very, it's barely off the ground here. And that's not a knock. That is acceptance of the fact of how good a level that you could eventually reach. And I loved one last thing. When I asked him what was going through his mind when Paul Maurice told him he was playing against Connor McDavid, you should have made a GIF of that, Dave. The way that his face lit up. Now, that's the kind of player anybody wants on their team, because as we've seen, it's very easy to end up on the bad side of the highlight reel when you play against Draisaitl and McDavid, and previously for him against Austin Matthews in the bubble. But when you have a player who wants to be going head-to-head with those guys, we've seen it with Mark Scheifele in the past. Yeah, you want to be measured against McDavid. Well, a lot of the times the measuring that doesn't look good in the measuring because of how elite McDavid has been. Dubois' ability to come out of the gate is impressive. And this isn't going to be a guy who's going to say, yeah, you know what, at game 50, I'm good. I've accomplished my goal here. This is a guy that when the games get tougher, you're going to see him elevate. And I know we did not see that in the playoff run last year. You're going to see it this year. Dubois is a guy that shines when the lights are on. And you guys know this. We had Aaron Portzline on the other day on our long form podcast, and I love the insight that he provided. I can't wait for that game in Columbus. It may not be a hat trick kind of night, but Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to be feeling all of the emotions. And to me, based on how we've seen him respond, we know how he responded to the emotions of last summer and being disappointed. To me, I think he's going to absolutely be a dominant force against Columbus in that game because it meant that place means something to him, and he didn't like the way that it ended there. So I can't wait for that game on Wednesday night.
Dave may have the fireplace behind him, but Kenny Weeb is smoking hot. Kenny,
love it.
You brought it, buddy. You can't ask anything more than that. You go take the rest of the break.
I mean, we've known Kenny for
off. You get ready for the Vikings game tomorrow. You've earned the rest of your day.
It's an absolute pleasure, Ken, because nobody breaks the game down like you do. So, I mean, I could listen to it all day long. We could have you on for the next 40 minutes. We've got Seth Rohrabaugh coming up to talk about the Pens, but I think Dave and Drew would agree. We'd love to have you on for this whole show, so I love it.
Boys, always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to be with the Curves. Got to bring the heat when you're with them. Sorry, I did text it to you guys, but happy belated anniversary again. Love to see you keep the show going.
Thank you, Kenny. Appreciate that, buddy. Have
an awesome weekend, guys.
Thanks, Ken.
Talk to you soon, bud. There he goes. Kenny Weeb joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show here on our YouTube channel. Let's take a break. When we come back, more on the Jets. We'll look at the week ahead. As he mentioned, Seth Rohrabaugh, he's going to come up at the bottom of the hour to preview Monday's game against the Penguins. Stick with us. Lots more to come. You're watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, it's Aaron from Bernstein's Deli.
That's right, Ezzy. I'm the guy who makes all your sandwich dreams come true.
So when you think illegal curve, what comes to you?
How about juicy chicken schnitzel, grilled salami, fried onions, melted cheddar cheese, and honey mustard on toasted thick-cut city rye bread?
Man, that's like the holy grail of sandwiches.
And so it shall be known as the illegal curve sandwich.
The illegal curve sandwich. Try it today at Bernstein's Deli. Find us at Corridon and Lanark or online at bernsteinsdeli.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whitened my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
We're back Saturday morning. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. Shifting our focus to the week upcoming for the Winnipeg Jets, a week featuring 4 games. Monday night, they have that 1-game homestand, which I never quite understand why the schedule maker does that sort of thing. The schedule maker brings the Jets back to play the Penguins on Monday before the Jets head out east to face the Columbus Blue Jackets. It's not really east, I suppose. Mid-east, I guess. On Wednesday, the return trip for Pierre-Luc Dubois. No Patrick Laine in the lineup, unfortunately, as he's out for injury, and Jack Roslovic, a little bit of the forgotten man, is playing a 4th-line role for the Blue Jackets last I saw. And then Friday, the Black Friday game, which is becoming a bit of a tradition, the Jets at the Minnesota Wild, a 2:30 in the afternoon start before the Jets jet off to Calgary on Saturday night to face the on-fire Calgary Flames and Jacob Markstrom, who has, I believe, now 5 shutouts in thus far for the Calgary Flames, certainly threatening the season, the record number of shutouts for one NHL season, held, I believe, by Tony Esposito, if I'm not mistaken. Going to be a busy week for the Jets, and they got to get back on track after failing to win on Thursday and Friday. And they got the Penguins, a Penguins team that has certainly not been at full strength for much of this year and has not been clicking on all cylinders for much of this year, Ezzy and Dave.
Yeah, but they're playing some better hockey, and Sidney Crosby's back now. He's scored his first goal of the season. They absolutely hammered the Canadians on what was that, Thursday night. They also have been on the receiving end of some blowouts. They got beat by the Capitals 6-1 last weekend as well, and they lost to the Senators. We go back to that game, and hey, I was right about the Senators, right? They did postpone those games. Even a broken clock is right twice, right, guys? So
they didn't have any players left. I mean, it got to a point.
No, I think, and it's funny because today they just like Ottawa's these guys are now out. It was like 7 of their guys. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, well, it was just a matter of time, right? Like you can only lose a certain amount of players, like Drew said, and then you just don't have any players left to call up from the AHL or the ECHL, right? So yeah, I mean, it's going to be. Look, at every time Sidney Crosby is in the building, I think, for me at least, I think you guys would agree, it's just an added, element that, gets Jets fans excited. You always see, a lot of Pens jerseys in the crowd. So, I mean, he's still
Sidney Crosby.
Exactly. And, you still are waiting for Malkin to come back. He hasn't played yet this year. And this is not, a Penguins team, I think, at least, that's as strong as they were, 4 or 5 years ago, but they are playing a little bit better. They're getting some better goaltending, and then you go into Columbus. We talked about that with Kenny Weeb. I mean, there's going to be extra motivation for a guy like Pierre-Luc Dubois. The Blue Jackets are playing really well as well right now after having a bit of a slow start. And then, Minnesota and Calgary, tough back-to-back situation on the road, right? So, I mean, this is going to be that next test, right? Like we talked about, the Islanders and the Blues at home being, a big test, and then, the back-to-back against the Oilers. And it's going to continue to be like this, guys, through December and January. You look at that December schedule, a lot of games, and we know that 3-week break we think is coming up in February. Obviously, it hasn't been confirmed, but the NHL is supposed to participate in Beijing at the Olympics. So, yeah, I mean, this is going to be a bit of a sprint here until that break in February. But yeah, this is going to be a very challenging week because, as you said, it's kind of weird to come back for the one home game and then have the 3 and 4 on the road, and they're all against good teams. Like the Jets can beat all of these teams, but they're all going to be tough ones. And then you have the weird start time on Black Friday, right? So yeah, I mean, it's going to be a very exciting week coming up, and I think the Jets are up to the test, but they are going to need, I think, some production from some guys that they haven't been getting that production from. Like we've talked about it, right? Like Blake Wheeler's still looking for his first goal. Mark Scheifele's looking to score a few more goals. Like he hasn't exactly, lit it up yet this year. So, it is going to be definitely, as I mentioned, a huge test for them with these games, 4 games next week.
Well, you certainly see the signs of Scheifele getting back to form a lot more than Wheeler. And I mean, Kenny, very eloquently covered it in the last segment, Dave. Has Paul Maurice, do you think, let's assume Stastny's back, and we'll certainly know more about that tomorrow when the Jets practice. Because, if Stastny doesn't practice tomorrow, then I think you're fairly safe to rule him out of Monday's game. I mean, just MO of Paul Maurice is injured player gets a practice in, then can return to the lineup. So if Stastny's back tomorrow, has Paul Maurice seen enough now? Is he going to do what, everyone, I think, thinks he should do, which is switch around the Blake Wheeler lineup to, Kenny said it, just to relieve some of that pressure that's on Wheeler, a guy who's obviously struggling right now, who's not, performing to the ability that he wants to perform to. Whether or not he can still perform to that ability is almost a separate issue altogether. And, time will tell on that front. But do you think that we're going to see maybe Svechnikov back up with Dubois and Connor, particularly given how impressive Svechnikov was last game, against the Canucks yesterday? Do you think that maybe you'll see a little tweaking of the lines if Stastny's ready to come back for Monday's game against Pittsburgh?
Well, I'm not going to answer that, Drew, because I want people to go to illegalcurve.com and read tomorrow's practice report. So if I give it away now, I mean, what's the point of why would you buy the cow when I'm giving the milk for free?
Tomorrow's practice report will tell you what happened at practice. Today's answer will be, what do you think will happen at practice?
Gotcha, yes. Gotcha. Okay, then I can answer the question.
See, look at how I do things for you.
The interesting thought from Paul Maurice, one of the common themes I've noticed in his comments, during whether it's game day media availabilities or practice media availabilities, he's talked about this idea of leaving guys out and giving them some rope, and letting them see what they can do with it. And so, he talked about Ehlers with Scheifele and Kopp and wanting that line to kind of stick together and see what they're capable of doing, and not, if it doesn't work for a game, pulling them away. Now it's worked, right? Ehlers has goals in 3 straight games. He's got himself going, and he's kind of getting back to that level you expect in terms of producing. And he clearly said, when he was asked about the idea of Svechnikov, and it was ironic, right? Like Svechnikov's on the top line, or whatever the hell you want to call that line, with Dubois and Connor, and then he gets like an avalanche of questions. I think 7 of the 9 questions in his media availability were all about Svechnikov being on the top line. And what happens? Sure enough, that night, Svechnikov's bumped off that line and Wheeler was put on. But I mean, look, I think if you've watched these games like we have, and these guys, I mean, this is their livelihood. They're paid to watch this stuff, and then after break it down and see what they like from games, see what they don't like, and come up as a staff with a plan to, have success moving forward. And is your greatest success going to be, I'm not trying to answer your question with a question, but is your greatest success going to be doing what you've done currently, or, in the last game or two? Or is it going to be to see, like, we knew that Paul Stastny had to put his skates on and be able to, because it was a bone bruise, it was believed to be a bone bruise that he suffered when he blocked that shot against.
It's hard to play hockey if you can't put a skate on.
Yeah. So, I mean, he, in that game, I think it was in the 6 against the Islanders where he blocked that shot. So a friendly fire shot, of course, but still blocked it with his foot. And so he hasn't been able to, as Paul Maurice said, put that skate on which we sounds like he was going to be able to do on his own this weekend here in Winnipeg when the team went on the road. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's no question. Look, Paul Stastny is still a productive player. He had 4 goals, 4 assists in 11 games for the Jets. And I think it's a function of, like Ken said, I'm not trying to just piggyback off what Kenny said, but he's right. Paul Stastny and Blake Wheeler aren't just, good friends off the ice. That wouldn't be your parameters for selection as a line mates, but they have a chemistry. They can play together, and they're
on ice and off ice.
And the reality is, even as your physicality or your physical ability is diminished to some degree, and whatever that looks like. I mean, Paul Stastny's played 16 seasons in the NHL, and he's still producing. So just because you don't have the same speed that you once had doesn't mean that your intelligence is gone. And I think that guys who think the game at a high enough level can adjust and adjust accordingly. So if you put, like we've talked about, we've been talking about it now for a while. If you put Lowry, Stastny, and Wheeler together, it's a very effective third line. It's an expensive third line, but it's a very effective third line. And the truth is that it can produce, and it can produce against weaker opponents, both from a forward perspective and a defensive perspective. And that's something you should be licking your lips at as for Blake Wheeler. Say, what an opportunity. Put Svechnikov back up with Dubois and Connor because they've had success. And then you keep Kopp, Ehlers, and Scheifele together because they're having success. And then to me, you've got a top nine that's as good as any top nine, and you're going to produce with that top nine. So that to me, in my analysis of the Jets in terms of balance and creating balance, that's your best opportunity because it takes the pressure off Blake Wheeler right now. It gives guys who have chemistry, clear chemistry, the ability to play together, and you're going to have success with that group.
Ezzy, who do you pull out of the lineup? So when Stastny's back, if it's Monday, if it's Wednesday, whenever it is, who comes out of the Winnipeg Jets lineup from their forward group? Christian Vesalainen has certainly been the guy who's played the fewest minutes as of late. I don't even think he cracked 5 last night.
437.
Yeah, I mean, just minuscule minutes, which is a shame because I think he's actually playing better than the number of minutes he's been allotted. But, that being said, is he the guy who's coming out of the Jets lineup, given that he really only plays at 5-on-5, doesn't play penalty kill, doesn't play power play? Is it him who's coming out when Stastny's back?
I do think it is. And we've talked about Dominic Toninato, he's out there on the penalty kill, he's scoring the odd goal. It's not most likely going to be Riley Nash because he plays center, right? And we assume that Stastny is going to go back on the wing, right? Because Dubois, Scheifele, Lowry, there's no reason to believe, they're going to any one of them are going to switch over, to the wing. So it would probably make the most sense that your fourth line then becomes Harkins, Nash, and Toninato. And I actually really like, we talked about it. I don't know if it was last night or, a few games ago about that line having an identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you've got, that kind of, sandpaper element to that game, but you've also got some skill. These guys, we've seen it with Riley Nash on the power play, and whether you like Nash out on the power play or not, a lot of that has to do, as we know, with the right shot and with Stastny being out of the lineup. I do think that, Harkins can be just as successful on the fourth line. He can be successful on the third line, but yeah, I do think if it's between, Vesalainen and Toninato, I would probably say Vesalainen because, as you mentioned, Toninato plays on the penalty kill. And quite frankly, I just think he's played better.
There you have it. The latest on Winnipeg Jets forward lines, and practice will be on illegalcurve.com tomorrow when the team returns to the ice. They're off completely today. The Moose are off completely today as obviously the Moose played Thursday, Friday. They're back in action tomorrow against the Milwaukee Admirals in the Moose Hockey Fights Cancer game. So will be at the arena tomorrow, which I guess would mean that the Jets are probably at the Iceplex tomorrow would be my guess. Logically, that would make sense.
Yeah,
I haven't seen anything for sure on that front. But in any event, illegalcurve.com will have all of the latest regarding the Winnipeg Jets, and Dave will have coverage of the Moose game tomorrow on the site as well. Let's head to break. When we come back, Seth Rorabaugh of the Pittsburgh Tribune Review joins us to preview Monday's game between the Jets and the Penguins. You're listening, you're watching, you're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, that was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rollies and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollies.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, it's Aaron from Bernstein's Deli.
That's right, Ezzy. I'm the guy who makes all your sandwich dreams come true.
So when you think Illegal Curve, what comes to you?
How about juicy chicken schnitzel, grilled salami, fried onions, melted cheddar cheese, and honey mustard on toasted thick-cut city rye bread?
Man, that's like the holy grail of sandwiches.
And so it shall be known as the Illegal Curve Sandwich.
The Illegal Curve Sandwich. Try it today at Bernstein's Deli. Find us at Corridon and Lanark or online at bernsteinsdeli.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. Starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Bottom of the hour. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Minuk Ezra Ginsburg with you. We're awaiting the arrival of Seth Rohrbaugh as he's going to try and get in touch with him to make sure he's going to join us. But in any event, we'll continue on talking about the Winnipeg Jets. It's what we do here on the program. Nice to see so many familiar faces, so many new faces joining us in the chat room on this Saturday morning. If you haven't already done so, smash that like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, get alerted each and every time we go live with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show or the Illegal Curve post-game show. That way you won't miss a minute of our programming. And as well, we always do recommend that you subscribe to the podcast because that way you can get it sent to your device automatically each and every time. Yes, David?
And also don't forget,
comment,
leave us a review on iTunes if you can. That's always a helpful thing for us. So if you are downloading the podcast and you have iTunes, and you can just go in there and drop what you think of our podcast or our show, we always appreciate that. So if you can do that as well, that would be very helpful for us.
What did you guys make of when Kenny was on, of his, Dave, you watch him more than anyone in the city. David Gustafson, the Gus Bus, as the lingo is now going. Do you think that is a viable option for? I mean, it's certainly a viable option. So let me rephrase the question. Do you think that it's likely to happen sooner rather than later? I mean, the way you heard Kenny talking about it there, he thought that it could be an option, if not for Monday, but then maybe some point in time this coming week, or sooner rather than later is sort of how I heard it from Kenny there. Do you think that's likely the case, Dave? What do you think about that?
It's a very good question.
It's not really the Jets' MO to bring up a guy to replace a guy in their lineup, unless there's an injury factor.
Well, and I was asked this question about Gustafson yesterday during the Moose game, and I said my expectation would be that it's most likely he comes up due to an injury, as opposed to, you're right, because that isn't generally the Jets' MO, is to replace a guy who's in the lineup and is healthy. So, and because of the cap situation, I mean, Gustafson's making $817.5 this year, so it's not a huge money situation, but. I'm not certain how they would do it, right? I mean, maybe they'd send Vesalainen down and let him play some bigger minutes with the Moose, and get going that way. And then they could always move Perfetti, who's been playing on the wing, up the middle and play him with Vesalainen because they have familiarity together. But you know what? I'm really not certain. I mean, the way Riley Nash is used, I mean, maybe he replaces Nash, but then who knows what that does for the Jets from a cap perspective. So, you know, it's definitely an interesting situation for the Jets. I mean, to me, David Gustafsson, they're over-ripening in the AHL. And I'm not a guy who has a problem with development because, as you know, I think it's important for these guys to do that as opposed to sitting around and Christian Vesalainen playing 4 minutes and 37 seconds and really not making a huge contribution. And Ken wasn't wrong when he was talking about, in response to Ezzy's question about Harkins, that idea of seizing opportunity that's in front of you. I think Gustafsson is their fail-safe for Andrew Kopp leaving. I think David Gustafsson is a guy who, when Andrew Kopp, if he leaves, obviously we could talk about that. I don't know if we're going to talk about that in this show, but if he does leave, you know, there's a guy like David Gustafsson who sounds a lot like Andrew Kopp, right? Responsible defensively, can provide offense, has a great 200-foot game, really smart player. So to me, David Gustafsson is that grooming to be an Andrew Kopp potential replacement. I thought the same thing for Adam Lowry, right? If the Jets didn't get that deal done with Adam Lowry, he's the kind of guy who could have maybe been your third line center. Now, David Gustafsson can be your fourth line center, and you're not even thinking about it in the sense that he's responsible, he's smart, he's consistent. Like I talked about yesterday, like watching his play, there's no panic in his game. He's just a smart player who, you know, the guy's coming at him. He doesn't just, you know, fumble with the puck and dish it off quickly. He absorbs the hit. He's already looked around. He knows where he wants to go, and he dishes the puck and makes a good play. And so he's just, and again, the NHL is not the AHL. It's a much better league. And so it's faster and you have to be able to adjust. I think David Gustafsson has that ability, you know, and Pascal Vincent, when we talked to him last year, right, when he said there's things that he needed to work on in his game. So he went over the summer, and I feel like his game has reached that next level, and he's producing at the AHL level. We'll see. We'll see if he's given that opportunity. I mean, I can't make a prediction. I just don't see it because, Drew, we've seen it from the Jets throughout the course of their sort of history. Yeah, that's not what they traditionally do. So I wouldn't expect that Gustafsson gets David Gustafsson's been recalled, but I don't expect it just because it just doesn't seem to be part of their thing. So I suspect Gustafsson will play for the Moose tomorrow against the Admirals, and especially with Paul Stastny coming back, expected to come back. You know, I think that they'll just kind of pull one of those guys off the fourth line and adjust it otherwise. I don't think they're going to introduce Stastny and Gustafsson into the lineup. No, that would not be my expectation.
Ezzy, I think that was the Minuk Moose report, so I think Dave has to wear the antlers. What do you think? Should Dave put the antlers on?
Absolutely.
Put the antlers on, Minuk. Let the people who missed the post-game show see you in the antlers. There you go. Every time Dave does the Minuk Moose report, he's going to wear those antlers from now on. Ezzy, what are your thoughts on Gustafsson coming up? I mean, if he comes up, and you mentioned it, Dave, that it seems in terms of the salary cap structure and things like that, the logical swap is for Vesalainen to move down, you know, to the NHL, to the AHL. But if Gustafsson comes up and Stastny's back and Vesalainen goes down, there's not really a roster spot for him necessarily. That's sort of another part of the machinations going on here. I'm not sure that, you know, Gustafsson comes in. You know, when Stastny comes back, I think it's almost too many moves, which you alluded to, you know, in that comment there.
Dave says that he doesn't, you know, expect it, you know, in the short term, and I agree. But I think don't be surprised, you know, if we do see David Gustafsson, you know, in the NHL with the Jets in the next, you know, month to 2 months, right? Because, you know, if you look at Jansen Harkins or Mason Appleton or Jack Roslovic, right, Dave, like you would know this better than anybody. It's almost like they force the Jets to call them up because they're playing so well. And obviously, you know, Gustafsson is playing so well for the Moose. You mentioned it on last night's Minuk Moose Minute that, you know, you believe Gustafsson has been the Moose best forward. Not to say that, you know, other players like, you know, Cole Perfetti haven't been really good, but overall, when you consider, you know, PK, power play, even strength, right? Like, I think, you know, there is a good chance you are going to see Gustafsson in the lineup. And, you know, there are injuries that always happen. The Jets are relatively healthy now, you know, with the exception of Paul Stastny, but you know that that's always a possibility. But yeah, I agree. I don't expect it to happen, you know, in the next day or two. But I do think, you know, he could be the key to have the Jets having, you know, a more impactful fourth line and a more impactful and more successful penalty kill, right? Like, again, and we're not hyping him up too much. Like, you talk to a lot of people, not just in the Jets organization, but that watch the Moose or have watched Gustafsson play internationally or with the Jets. Like, he's a really impressive player who's ready for the NHL. So really, it's a cliche, but it's only a matter of time. Like, this guy is going to have a good NHL career, and it just happens to it'll depend on, you know, what's happening with the Jets, and is the timing right to bring him up, right, Dave? But it's going to happen, you know, soon. We don't know. So, I mean, even though Dave M is the Moose insider, I mean, I think he's just going to force the Jets to have to call him up eventually, you know, whether that's because of, you know, how well he's playing in the AHL, you know, because of injury, or a combination of the both. You know, he is going to be, you know, with the Jets very soon, whether it's this year or next year.
I think the part of his game that is maybe getting a little bit overlooked is his offensive upside, Dave. I mean, you know, this is a guy who, as you know, Kenny mentioned it when, you know, about an hour or so ago, you know, this is a guy who's not just, you know, adept defensively. He's putting up big numbers. He's leading the Moose with 12 points in 15 games. This isn't a guy who's a one-trick pony. He can probably even maybe provide a little bit of juice offensively to the fourth line of the Jets that you know, Riley Nash has not been able to provide so far. So, I mean, it's almost twofold. If he comes up, is he coming up on the wing, or is he coming up the middle? And secondly, you know, the offensive upside to his game, how much of a factor should that be in the decision? Because, you know, you do get to a point where how much more do you have to prove at the AHL level? Yeah. And I'm not saying that it necessarily has to be this week, but, you know, it seems as though Gustafsson's getting very close to that point if he's not already there.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's the reality. The reality is that these situations resolve themselves generally out of injury, right? I mean, if you go through the history of all these players, right? Like, Adam Lowry was sent to the Moose and then he came back. Now, did he come back because he forced his way back up, or because an injury occurred? Andrew Kropp, the same thing. Andrew Kropp was sent down to the Moose and he was playing well for the Moose, but an injury resulted. And sometimes that's the wake-up call these guys need, right? Sometimes that's the thing.
Kyle Connor went down to the Moose too, briefly.
Yeah, but now, that he started the season after his first full season as a pro. He went down, played 5 games, and he lit it up. Now, I mean, he was scoring every game, as you would expect with Kyle Connor, as he did in the last 20. I think he scored like 20 goals in the last 20 games, 21 games or something like that. But it's funny, like, he was not. After he played the season with the Jets, started the season with the Jets, what did he play, like 20 games for Winnipeg? Then he went down to the American Hockey League. Didn't light it up right away, but then figured it out, adjusted, and then just tore it up. And then in the final 20 games, 21 games, and then started off that next season. But again, that's what traditionally happens. A lot of times these guys will get injured. There'll be an injury. Remember Jack Roslovic? I mean, why did Jack Roslovic get the opportunity? He was lighting up the American Hockey League. They were the best team in the American Hockey League. That team, if they would have stayed together, was winning the Calder. I mean, they were just so good as a collective group. Every guy was winning. I think Michael Hutchinson won like goaltender of the week and goaltender of the month. Roslovic was winning player of the week. But then Mark Scheifele went down and with an injury, and all of a sudden Jack Roslovic gets an opportunity. So, yeah, I mean, look, these guys force their way because of their play, but sometimes it's an injury provides this kind of opening that they wouldn't have had because they might have been over-ripening. And look, guys, Detroit Red Wings, the team that kind of set the benchmark for ripening players in Grand Rapids and the Ken Holland sort of school of thought, I still think there is a place for that. I know some people feel that if a guy is ready, get him into the NHL right away because, you know, it's becoming a younger league and it's becoming an opportunity. Mm-hmm. I just think a guy like David Gustafsson, first of all, you'll never hear a complaint from David Gustafsson. He's never gonna bemoan his situation. He's just gonna continue to develop. But he wants that opportunity. And so he's doing what he can in the American Hockey League to get the notice of the parent club. Well, like I said, doesn't cheat the game. And that's what you want from a player of his caliber, is a guy who doesn't cheat the game, plays it properly, plays responsible defensively, has that offensive upside. And it's interesting because when he went back to Tingsryd, which is his hometown in Sweden, and he played there, I remember talking to him. And he saw, and I asked him,
did you visit him in Sweden?
No, but I did an interview with him when he was
I'm joking.
No, we've officially lost Ezzy. And so when I did an interview with him, and he talked about that offensive upside to his game, because we had always thought of him as a complete 200, not complete, but defensively responsible 200-foot player who you were never going to have to worry about in the defensive zone. But then he started to add more of an offensive element. And like I said, don't take it from me, take it from Derek Meat, who is doing the color alongside Daniel Fink. And he talked about David Gustafson's shot. And he said, and I quote, that's an NHL caliber shot. And so that's kind of one of those situations where you've got a player who's ready to go and he just needs that opportunity. And again, do you want to see him play 4 minutes a night? No. But if you put him on that, I mean, guys, think about how good a fourth line, I know it would be inexperienced. How good would a fourth line be of Gustafson, Harkins, and Vesalainen? Because Vesalainen and Gustafson have a lot of chemistry. And Harkins is a responsible player. I mean, I know that they would, or Toninato, I don't want to get rid of Toninato just so easily. So I expect you to have him over Vesalainen. But even Harkins, Toninato, and Gustafson would give you an incredibly strong, I think, fourth line. And a line that could produce some offense, but would be responsible defensively.
I don't disagree with you. I mean, I don't disagree with anything you said. I just have, I mean, knowing what we know about Paul Maurice and knowing what we know about his decision-making, I'd be surprised if the fourth line was ever that young. I mean, I still think that Maurice is going to count on Riley Nash, despite even when Gustafson comes up, if that happens sooner rather than later. I don't see Riley Nash exiting the lineup, whatever you want to say.
They did healthy scratch him for 2 games in favor of the 11 and 7.
Sure, that's true. There was yes, that's a valid point. You are right about that. It just strikes me. I just don't think Paul Maurice will trust a fourth line that is as young as you just described.
Yeah. I think I just would quickly interject that I think that if you're going to try it out, you may as well give it a whirl. I mean, nobody's forcing your hand and saying you have to play it for 60 games, but I would just think that you're better off, when you have that opportunity, when you see an opportunity for them to get some games in, why not give them a shot, especially against maybe a weaker opponent?
Sure. Well, and it's not as young as some people think, right? Like Christian Vesalainen's 22 now. Jansen Harkins is 24 now.
NHL young is what is.
No, I know what you were saying, but to me, it's not like you have 2 18-year-olds and a 19-year-old, right? Like these guys are. Harkins is a veteran pro now. He's obviously played, not as much as maybe he would have liked at this point in the NHL, but he's an NHL regular now, right? And Vesalainen, we've talked about that. Like, I don't think there's a lot for him to prove in the AHL. Like, if you are going to take him out of the lineup, I think you have to keep him as one of your 13 forwards. Like, maybe he does go back down to the Moose, but I just think, at this point, first round draft pick, he's 22 years old, 23 years old. Like, you got to see what you have with Vesalainen at the NHL level. He can play well at the AHL level. So it'll be interesting to see, but there's no doubt that, Gustafson is this year's, Jansen Harkins, if you want to, call it that. Like Jansen Harkins, was a few years back. Like, Dave has been, at the front of the line, singing the praises of Gustafson, but the Jets have a really good one in the 2018 second rounder.
Yeah, they certainly do, and I think fans are champing at the bit to see him with an opportunity. But when you get at this point in his career, at this point in his development, I think the Jets, when they call him up, they want it to be almost a permanent call up. Now, of course, nothing in life is permanent. You never know exactly how things are going to play out. But I think that's what the Jets are organizationally planning. That's what they want. They want it to be him to step in and be a full-time regular. Now, is that full-time up the middle? Is that full-time on the wing? Right now, that's, I think, where the Jets are trying to figure things out. They're trying to balance things to that point. Go ahead, Dave.
Well, I was just going to say, like, worth noting, though, is that he's been playing center for the Moose, right? And so when Jack Roslovic, in that season when he was starting to get groomed to come up to the NHL, remember, he was a center in the AHL his entire career. And then all of a sudden, he's suddenly playing on the wing, which was obviously rather curious. And then, of course, when he came up to the NHL with the way they had the structure, he was obviously up on the wing. So Gustafson, they've maintained him in that center role, playing alongside Cole Perfetti. So I don't think that if you're going to bring David Gustafson up, it's to necessarily go on a wing. I think you're bringing him up to be your fourth line center. And you know what? Again, guys, think about that center depth. Mark Scheifele, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Adam Lowry, David Gustafson. I mean, that's fourth line center depth. And again, I don't really care about the order. So if people want Dubois as your first and Scheifele as your second, that's fine. I'm just saying that's center depth. That would be incredible for this Jets team to have.
I think one of the great what ifs is what if the Jets had kept Roslovic up the middle? Because you look at him now in Columbus. I mean, he's sort of, Line A and Dubois get all the headlines, and it's a shame that on Wednesday, Line A won't be in the lineup. But Roslovic was involved in that trade too. I mean, this is a guy who's got 4 points in 14 games in Columbus this year. Certainly struggling, no goals. Not that he's ever going to be a prolific goal scorer at the NHL level. He's more of a setup guy than a trigger guy. But I do think that's a what if, and I wonder that if the Jets, and this isn't to say that they did this on purpose or they did this maliciously, but when they moved him from the up the middle to the wing, how detrimental that was to his long-term development as an NHL player. That's you think necessarily that it's so easy for a guy to bounce back and forth or switch from the up the middle to the side, and it certainly I don't think is the case. And we saw Dubois last year struggle when he was on the wing. I mean, obviously, that was a write-off of a season almost altogether. But I do wonder, that's always one of those what-ifs that's going to be in the back of my mind, Ezzy.
Yeah, I've been a little less high on Roslovic as others. Like, I just think we saw him enough to know what he is. Like, I think there was always that kind of, can he, elevate himself to a second-line center and be better? I agree with what you're saying, though, Drew. But, the reality is, like, he wouldn't be playing center on this Jets team. Like, he's not better than any of the centers the Jets currently have, right? And I think there's a lot of players that have to play on the wing, right? Like, you might have, when Cole Perfetti starts in the NHL, he most likely will be on the wing. I think you guys would agree with that. And he has played on the wing before, and Cole Perfetti has more talent than, most young prospects in any team's system, right? So I think it's a good point, but I just think that, Roslovic, if he was on this Jets team right now, like, he wouldn't probably be in the top 6. He might not even be in the top 9. But there's no doubt that, when you're going back to what we were talking about before, I mean, the Jets have much more depth at forward and on defense, but specifically, we're talking about forwards here. I mean, if your 13th forward is Dominic Toninato, I absolutely love it, because I think he's been doing a great job on the fourth line and a great job on the penalty kill. So we'll see what happens. At the end of the day, what we're talking about here, guys, is the Jets need to get more minutes out of their fourth line. Like, we saw that last year at times, right? Like Nate Thompson, Trevor Lewis, Matty Perreault, or whoever else was out there on the fourth line. Like, they just weren't playing enough, right? So I think that it really factors in sometimes when you're playing the better teams and when you get into the playoffs. You just want to have a fourth line, at least getting closer to 10 minutes a night, and, not at 4 or 5 minutes a night.
To Ezzy's point there, Dave, has Perfetti still been playing on the wing as of late with the Moose? I know he was for a while. So
put the antlers back on, Dave.
Yeah, no, he's been playing on the wing with David Gustafson and Austin Pagansky. So he's looked good. He's looked really good. And like I said last night on the show, in the Minuk Moose minutes, because it's definitely not a minute, unfortunately.
No. You can't start. That's what makes it funny. You can't start adding the plural to it. It's still the Minuk Moose minute, but then it just takes 5 minutes. That's where the joke is.
Okay, fair enough. I'm sorry.
I disagree. I think it should be minutes now.
Mm-mm.
Okay, well, we'll leave it to Drew's capable hands. But the reality is that, he pulled off a move yesterday that was just phenomenal, and that had he ended it, it would have been a goal of the year candidate. But no, Perfetti is definitely playing on the wing right now, and that's probably because that's where they see him, right? Like, as you guys just said, as we just discussed. I mean, in one of the comments, I think it was Alan just said, like, centers take a while to develop, and so we know that Cole Perfetti is going to be playing pro hockey, and he's going to be doing that with the Moose, and they're not trying to rush him up to the NHL because there's things in his game that need to be developed, and while his hockey sense, his hockey intelligence is next level. The AHL is not the NHL, and the AHL this year is not the AHL he played in last year, right? Because all the guys that were on the taxi squad, a lot of guys who were the top guys in the AHL, would have been the top guys in the AHL, weren't there last year. Cole Perfetti is a guy who learns, he develops, he changes his game. Last year, you talk about being a perimeter player, getting a lot of his points on the power play. That was Cole Perfetti's season early last year. Then he started going to the hard areas. Pascal Vincent, who, of course, he also will be part of the reunion tour when the Jets go to Columbus. But Pascal Vincent often talked about that, how you saw a different type of Cole Perfetti, a guy willing to go to the hard areas, to go to the net, in order to create for his teammates and create for himself. So that was one of the adjustments he made last year. And again, he's adjusting this year to a different type of game. So yeah, I mean, it's always interesting. And the one thing I was going to say about Rosberg is I think he actually was a winger in college. I actually don't think he was a center. I don't remember it. Miami, Ohio.
I'm pretty sure he was a center at Miami.
I don't.
Ohio. They drafted.
Oh,
him
no.
Sorry.
He was a winger in junior. Because
Okay.
I remember talking to him about it, and he said he actually started as a winger as a young player, then switched over to center. But he did have some experience on the wing. But yeah, you're right, Drew. When they drafted him, he was drafted as a center.
Yeah, because everyone thought he was going to be the replacement center
for Brian Little.
Brian Little.
That's
obviously, circumstances being what they are, that never came to fruition. Yeah. Let's take our final break. When we come back, we'll wrap with some final thoughts before we can go on with our weekend and maybe avoid one another for the next 36 hours or so before the post-game show on Monday. So stick with us with some final thoughts upcoming. You're listening, you're watching, you're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, it's Aaron from Bernstein's Deli.
That's right, Ezzy. I'm the guy who makes all your sandwich dreams come true.
So when you think Illegal Curve, what comes to you?
How about juicy chicken schnitzel, grilled salami, fried onions, melted cheddar cheese, and honey mustard on toasted thick-cut city rye bread?
Man, that's like the holy grail of sandwiches.
And so it shall be known as the Illegal Curve Sandwich.
The Illegal Curve Sandwich. Try it today at Bernstein's Deli. Find us at Corridon and Lanark or online at bernsteinsdeli.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
We're back to wrap Saturday's Illegal Curve Hockey Show. By the way, Ezzy getting crushed by that baby grand piano will never not be funny to me. It brings a smile to my face. Sometimes, seeing my kids brings a smile to my face. Spending some quality time with Dave M brings a smile to my face. Seeing the idea of Ezzy being crushed by a baby grand piano brings a smile to my face as well.
Speaking of our sponsors, shout out to Boston Pizza. Thank you for continuing to be a sponsor. We took the family to Boston Pizza on Taylor. Ruben was standing on the up on the booth the entire time. It had a pierogi pizza. It was unbelievable. Just great service. I mean, BP is always absolutely packed. with kids. I actually ran into someone who I went to a university with who's got 5 kids. So I was like, I can't really complain. Well, he's got triplets in.
Oh wow!
Shout out to Cameron. Used to play University of Winnipeg Westman volleyball. So shout out to him. He mentioned that he catches the show every once in a while. So good to run into somebody that I went to university with. I'm not going to say how many years ago, but yeah, shout out to VP. My kids absolutely love going there, and most kids do. So.
That's true. They do. It is a great place for your restaurant. And of course, if you want to tip a few back with the boys, you can also head into the lounge as well. Big thank you to our good friends at Boston Pizza for their support of the show, as well as our sponsors, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Linden Market Dental Center, Bernstein's Deli, Zappia Group Realty, Tough Duck, and Bagelsmith. You know them from, of course, the post-game show, Boston Pizza, Seagram's, and Rolly's Transfer. Support these fine businesses because they support Illegal Curve Hockey. If you want information on becoming a sponsor of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, send one of us an email. Drew at illegalcurve.com, Dave at illegalcurve.com, Ezra at illegalcurve.com, and we'll hook you up with all you need to know about joining the great roster of sponsors for this show. Here's the
Drew, Sandy knows what's up about the spicy pierogi pizza. Shout out to the barbecue chicken pizza as well.
There you go. As he likes his pizzas, I think what we're finding out in a breaking news sort of segment here on the show. Reminder that Monday's game is actually a 7:30 puck drop, which means post-game show will be a little later, right around probably 10:15 or so Monday night. So, make a mental note about that. A little bit later of a puck drop on Monday night, but a little bit of an earlier puck drop on Wednesday and Friday when the Jets head to Columbus and then Minnesota for the matinee, and then a late game on Saturday.
And you're going as a fan,
Calgary.
right, Drew?
I am. That's the plan. I'm planning on going. My good friend, Dr. Goldenberg, invited me to the game on Monday. So my plan is to enjoy the game with him, and we'll see if I make it back in time for the post-game show, or you guys will have to do the yeoman's work and carry my carcass in my absence. I think you guys can handle that, though.
So when you go with Benji, as we know him, he is also Dr. Goldenberg. But
yes,
when you go there, and you're there as a fan, do you do analysis during the first intermission? You're like, welcome back to the post-game show, sponsored.
That's exactly what
I try. Intermission show, as the intermission show.
I try and annoy and infuriate as many people around me as humanly possible. That's actually something I'm quite good at. That's been one of my talents for many years in my life, is to be as annoying as humanly possible. And,
I'm with you on that one, Drew.
Yeah, thank you there. I appreciate that. In any event, we want to say a big thank you to Kenny Weeb for joining us in hour number 1. He brought some great insight into the show.
And into hour number 2.
And into hour number 2 as well. In case you missed any of that, the replay will be immediately available here on the YouTube channel as well. The podcast will be up very shortly thereafter, as soon as Dave M does his magic. Want to thank so many of you in the chat for joining us. We always appreciate hearing and seeing from you. If it is the Legal Curve Hockey Show Saturday mornings or the Illegal Curve post-game show. If you haven't done so already, smash that like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast, leave us some reviews, leave us some comments, whatever it might be. We always appreciate the feedback. For Dave Minuk, whose head is on fire, for Ezra Ginsburg, who's in the bottom middle, I am your host, Drew Mindell. Until Monday night and the Illegal Curve post-game show after the Jets and the Penguins, we wish you have a great rest of the weekend. And if it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.